legitness.
Yeah, it was. How?
We have once again come to that most holy time of the gaming calendar, the season of hype. And the hype is big. Bethesda just dropped a 45-minute showcase of their upcoming game, Starfield, and it looks amazing. Everything from the graphics, to the guns, to the spaceships, spacesuits, space sports, space people, space cities, and space, all looks incredible. But this is not the first game in the past 5 years to look amazing, even industry redefining in all of its promotional material. And the past 5 games that did that all had horrible, buggy, infuriating releases. And one of them was another Bethesda title. There's no denying that the video game industry as a whole has gotten complacent. People are promised grand, life-changing experiences and delivered poop on a platter. For $70. If you're not one of the people that gets swindled into the pre-order bundle. The games need updates for another year or two just to become playable, and then they finally become decent games, about 3 more expansion pack releases after that. No Man's Sky, Battlefront 2, Fallout 76, Cyberpunk 2077. The story is the same every time. The question everybody should be asking is not whether a game looks good in its highly curated, specially selected, and heavily edited promotional material. The question is whether the game will live up to the hype. And there are a lot of troubling signs to suggest that Starfield is promising way too much without the ability to deliver. Now, before I get started, I just want to say, don't shoot the messenger here. I want Starfield to be the best game ever released. I want it to redefine gaming as we know it, and provide an incredible experience. But it is important for the customers of these gaming companies, all of us, to remember that game developers are human. They overpromise and underdeliver. They take shortcuts and they misrepresent the truth about their games all the time. There's nothing wrong with being excited for the release of a big, highly anticipated game, but it's also important to live in reality and keep a reasonable set of expectations. With that being said, let's get into the video. A good game is really good in probably 3 to 5 things. An excellent game is the same, but it takes one of those things and perfects it. Take Titanfall 2 for example, one of the best multiplayer shooters in the past decade and the best movement shooter on the market. The game has excellent gunplay, a cool universe, and giant freaking mech robots. But where does it really excel? The movement. The developers did a good job on many aspects of this game, but they made the movement so good it's unbelievable. And the skill ceiling is incredibly high, rewarding players for creativity and practice. On the other hand, the game is small. Though the campaign is excellent, it's pretty short, and there are only a handful of maps in multiplayer, a few different game modes, 7 pilot classes, and 7 different kinds of titans. But that's fine. Game developers do not have an infinite amount of time to get their projects done. And if they want to make one part of their game as good as possible, they need to divert more energy and resources into that aspect of the game. If they can do this without compromising other parts of the game or leaving them unfinished, then that's a success. However, when you expand the size and scope of a game, you greatly increase the chance of introducing bugs that need to be fixed and leaving other parts of the game boring or unfinished. With Starfield, Bethesda is promising a massive game. Todd Howard even states himself in his interview with IGN.
I mean, you could say in some respects, this is like 5 or 6 games in one, right? It's the spaceship game, it's an on-the-ground game, it's just a dialogue game, it's an outpost game, it's a crafted game. It does all of these things, and so...
If Starfield really is 5 or 6 games wrapped into one game, then it has a lot of potential to disappoint. When you are working on 5 or 6 games in one, you'd need a development team 5 or 6 times greater than the industry standard to make the game good, and that would still come with its own problems. If you want to keep a normal sized team but still make the game good, then you'd need 5 or 6 times as much time to work on it. Now I know that Todd Howard has been directing the work on Starfield since the release of Fallout 4, which was 8 years ago. But even with all that time, this game is promising so much that it's highly unlikely that they can make every aspect of it really good and keep out the bugs. Furthermore, if we get into the specific things Bethesda is promising in Starfield, the immense task of making this game actually good becomes clear. The advertising for Starfield is promising over 1,000 planets with procedural generation and handcrafted locational elements. The likelihood that most of these planets will look the same, feel empty and boring, and offer nothing of value to the player is high. Just a single planet as detailed and lore-heavy as Earth would be impossible to fully explore in a single lifetime. On top of all those planets, they're also promising interesting NPCs to crew your ship found at every starport. Now, most Bethesda games have about 5 interesting characters, maybe 1 really interesting character, and then 800 random people with no personality that all share 5 voice actors.
Never should have come here.
Making the majority of the NPCs in the game interesting is an immense undertaking. Starfield also contains space combat and normal combat. Putting both of these things into a game and getting them both right is an extremely difficult challenge, even for games that make these things their entire focus. Speaking of combat, if Bethesda's idea of making the game more challenging is still to just make every NPC have a ton of health and make the player really weak, as was the case in Fallout 4 and Skyrim, then playing Starfield will get old fast. There are so many other things that Bethesda is promising in Starfield, like a good story, fun movement, extremely in-depth character creation, a highly refined backstory and perk system, and more that I just can't get into for the sake of time. But to do all of these things to a high standard is an insanely difficult challenge, and the odds that Bethesda is going to pull it off, given their history, are slim to none.
We're all brothers and sisters in binds now. What's wrong with him, huh?
Any video talking about the possibility of Bethesda crapping the bed with their Starfield launch would be remiss if it didn't bring up the absolute boggle that was Fallout 76's launch. The release of Fallout 76 was a complete disaster. The pre-order bundles were a scam, the promotional clothing and Nuka Dark Rum were crappy and low quality, and the worst offense of all, the game was completely unfinished. 76's launch was one of the most insane game launches of all time, and now just 5 years later, it seems like everyone has forgotten about it. I swear, the AAA gaming industry is like a drunk husband that promises to be good, but then does the most unforgivable crap to its customers. But the entire community refuses to punish them for it. He's really sweet when nobody's looking, I swear. In the IGN interview with Todd Howard that I referenced earlier, the reporter doesn't ask Todd a single question about the release of 76 and how Bethesda intends to avoid repeating the past with Starfield. You know, the #1 question that everyone should be asking right now. Instead, he asks questions like this.
Adjacent to that, it seems like there's so much to do in this game that are you going to be okay if players just don't end up really necessarily even paying much attention to the main story and just end up kind of doing their own thing?
Excuse me, Mr. Game Developer Man, have you considered the fact that your game might be too good? As I stated in the beginning of this video, I want Starfield to succeed. I want it to be everything that it's promising to be. I mean, who wouldn't want a game that cool? Furthermore, it's okay to be excited about a game. And if you want to pre-order Starfield after seeing its promotional material, fine. Who am I to tell you how to spend your hard-earned cash? But please, keep your reason about you and keep your expectations reasonable. If you like this video, please like and sub. If you disagreed with me, please let me know why in the comments. I'm happy to get into a heated argument over the internet over stuff that doesn't matter at all. Also, I admit this video was pretty negative, so let me know if I should make a video on the reasons to be optimistic about Starfield, cause I can think of a few. Alright, peace.